ever wish you could, like, grab a beam of light and, like, bend it to your will? Yeah, me too. Especially, like, when my internet's being super slow, you know? Well, get this. Scientists are actually getting crazy close to doing just that. It's pretty wild. We're going to be diving into this research paper today, all about something called soliton manipulation. I know. Soliton manipulation sounds kind of intimidating, right? But trust me on this one. It's really cool stuff. Basically, these researchers, they figured out how to control these, like, super tiny, crazy, powerful pulses of light. They're called solitons. And get this, this isn't just some, abstract physics thing. This research could totally change how we send information, like, across the entire planet, maybe even, like, how we understand the human brain. It's huge. So yeah. Get ready, because we're about to break down this crazy research. First things first, fiber optics. You know, those super thin strands of glass that carry light signals like crazy fast. They're like the superhighways of the internet, right? Just zipping information around the globe at the speed of light. But even though we're talking about light here, it's not as simple as like shining a flashlight down a cable. The way light acts in these fiber optic cables, it's actually governed by a whole bunch of rules, like a physics playbook, you know? And one of the most important parts of this playbook is something called the nonlinear Schrödinger equation.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with all the math stuff. Just know that this equation, it basically helps us understand how light waves, how they interact, how they travel inside those tiny little fiber optic tubes. Now, this is where things get super interesting. Okay, so back in the 1980s, scientists, they figured out that under the right conditions, light pulses could travel through these fibers in these amazingly stable, crazy, tightly packed bundles. Imagine like tiny little torpedoes of light, right? Just holding their shape and energy over like huge distances. They called these special light pulses solitons. And let me tell you, the discovery of solitons, it was a big deal. Imagine, right, being able to send information on these like perfectly formed pulses of light, zipping across, I don't know, continents without losing any signal strength. It'd be incredible. It seemed like, honestly, like the holy grail of optical communication. But there was a catch. Even though we knew solitons existed, actually controlling them, that was a whole other story. It's like we knew these tiny little light torpedoes were out there, but we couldn't like steer them. We couldn't control their speed or anything. We could just kind of watch them go by. So how did scientists even begin to solve this problem? That's where our deep dive really gets going. Let's bring in our expert to, shed some light on this. What was so tricky about controlling these solitons? It's not like they're, actual physical things, are they?
Right, yeah. It's not like, we can just go in there with tweezers or something. You just like, grab a soliton. Yeah. They're light waves, right. And they're incredibly sensitive.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, imagine, if you have like a pond, right?
Yeah.
And you just want to like adjust one ripple.
Okay.
Without like messing with all the others, it's really hard.
Right. Yeah. It'd be like trying to herd cats or something,
Exactly.
But these researchers, though, they found a way. So what was their like secret weapon? How'd they do it?
So they actually figured out a way to kind of like map out the sensitivity of each soliton, like within a pulse of light.
Okay. And
they call these maps eigenvalue response functions, or like RFs for short.
Yeah. RFs. Okay. That sounds a little technical. Can we break that down? Like, what do these RFs what do they do?
Okay. So imagine like you have a control panel, right?
Yeah.
And it has all these different dials.
Okay.
And each dial like controls a specific soliton in the pulse of light.
Okay. I'm with you so far.
And these dials, right, they're super sensitive.
Okay.
Like you just barely, nudge one, and it's only going to affect that one soliton.
Oh, wow.
Without messing with the others.
Okay.
That's basically what RFs give us. Like they're like a set of instructions that tells exactly which dial to turn to, like manipulate that one specific soliton in the pulse.
So it's like a remote control, but for light waves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild. But how do they even see these RFs? Like, are we talking like some crazy powerful microscope here or what?
That's the thing. They don't see them directly.
Okay.
They use like math models and simulations to kind of map out how each soliton in the pulse is going to respond to different like external things.
Okay.
It's like, imagine you have like a blueprint
that
shows you like all the weak points in a building or something, right?
Yeah.
You can't like see those weak points just by looking at the building, right?
Right.
But the blueprint shows you exactly where they are.
Right. So you know where to like, apply pressure.
Exactly, for the maximum impact, yeah.
So they've got these like RF blueprints, basically,
Right.
and they know exactly where to kind of like poke the light to get it to do what they want.
Yep.
But did they like put this into practice? Did they actually build something to test this out?
They did, yeah. And it's actually really cool.
This is where it gets good, right?
Yeah, they actually they built a whole system to test out these RF blueprints.
Okay. So tell us about it. Tell us about this experiment. What'd they build?
So they used a loop of fiber optic cable,
Okay.
almost like a racetrack for light. And they sent a pulse of light with, a bunch of solitons in it through it.
Okay. So they got the light racetrack. Then what?
Right. So then they used this very precise technique. It's called Gaussian-shaped phase modulation to like apply very specific distortions to the light pulse as it went around the loop.
Okay. Hold on. Gaussian-shaped phase modulation. That sounds really complicated. Can we maybe like get a simpler way to picture that?
Okay, so imagine like playing a violin or something.
Okay.
Like by like really carefully pressing on the strings and moving the bow just right.
Yeah.
You can make like ton of different sounds, right?
Right.
It's kind of like that. They're making these tiny adjustments to the light waves in the pulse, like fine-tuning the note.
So they're like fine-tuning the light wave to control the solitons.
Yeah, exactly.
Understandable.
And that's what they saw.
This is the exciting part. Tell us what happened.
So they actually saw the solitons in the pulse, like speeding up, slowing down, even separating from the pack, like all based on what those RF blueprints predicted.
No way. That's incredible. It's like they're like choreographing a dance. But this is way more than just some cool trick, right? What are the real world implications here?
Well, so think about it, right? Being able to like control solitons so precisely could totally change a bunch of different fields.
Like what? Give us the good stuff.
Well, for one, like optical communication.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Faster internet. Tell me more. Faster internet. Okay, yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah.
How do these solitons, how do they play into that?
So like one of the biggest problems, right, with our fiber optic systems right now is like the light signals, they kind of degrade over long distances.
Where they get weaker.
Yeah, exactly. They lose strength, definition. It's, like if you think about like someone talking, the farther away they get, the quieter their voice gets.
Right, yeah. And to make up for that, we have to have those like repeaters or whatever to boost the signal along the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. But solitons, they don't really do that. They keep their shape and their energy over like crazy long distances.
So you're saying they could like potentially get rid of the need for those repeaters?
Potentially, yeah. It's pretty wild.
So we could send information like across the globe with these perfect little pulses of light, no signal loss, no repeaters.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's like, going from like riding a bike to flying in a supersonic jet or something.
Okay, yeah. I like that analogy.
And it's not just about like, how fast either. It's also about how much information you can send at once.
Right, the bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. Solitons could like increase that dramatically.
Yeah. Right, so faster speeds, more bandwidth. This is starting to sound a little too good to be true. But this technology, it's not just about like internet speeds.
Oh, no, not even close.
What else could this be used for?
So imagine like medical imaging, right? Yeah. This level of control over light waves, we could be seeing inside the human body with like crazy clarity that we've never even like dreamed of before.
Wow. And didn't I read somewhere that solitons could even like change how we build computers?
Yeah. So optical computing, it's this idea of using, light instead of electricity to process information.
Right.
Solitons, because we can control them so precisely.
Right.
They could, like the key to making that happen.
Yeah. This is really incredible stuff. We started with this like simple question, can we control solitons? And now we're talking about like changing the internet, medicine, computers.
It's amazing what we can do when we like, really try to understand these fundamental laws of physics.
Right. It really makes you think about like what else is out there, just waiting for us to discover it. This has been an awesome deep dive. I don't know about you, but I feel like I learned a ton today.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
So to everyone listening, keep those brainwaves buzzing, and we'll catch you next time when we, dive into another fascinating corner of the science world.
Okay, so get this. Imagine light, but instead of it acting like, a wave, it's like it's made of these tiny little particles all bundled up. And these particles, They just zip through space, holding their shape the whole way. It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah, it's pretty mind-bending stuff.
Right. You would think, wait, doesn't light travel in waves? I mean, that's what we all learned.
Yeah.
But that's where it gets really interesting because we're talking about optical solitons today.
Hmm.
And trust me, this isn't just some abstract physics concept.
Yeah.
This stuff could change how we send information all over the world.
Absolutely. It's not just some theoretical possibility. Solitons are a real phenomenon, and what governs their behavior is this really fascinating equation known as the nonlinear Schrödinger equation.
Oh, okay. That sounds a little intimidating, I got to be honest. Not going to lie. But you don't need a PhD in physics to follow along, right?
No, not at all.
So basically, this equation.
This equation, often shortened to NLSE, it's like the rule book for light, especially when it's traveling through something like a fiber optic cable.
Okay, so like the rule book, like the do's and don'ts.
Exactly. And one of the key things it helps us understand is how the intensity of the light, how bright it is, can actually affect how fast it goes and even its shape. That's where the nonlinear part comes in. Things don't exactly work as you might expect.
Okay, so things get a little wonky.
A little wonky. You see, under the right conditions, when the light's intensity is just right, that's when we start to see these stable pulses of light, our solitons sort of emerging from the wave.
So it's like the light is trying to decide, does it want to be a wave and spread out like it normally does?
Right. It's this push and pull.
Or does it want to bunch together because of this weird nonlinear effect?
Exactly.
And then, when those two forces are perfectly balanced, boom, soliton.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. And what makes this research we're looking at even more exciting is that a team of scientists from France and Russia have actually figured out a way to manipulate these solitons, kind of like separating ingredients in a smoothie, which,
Sounds impossible. How do you even start to control something like that, especially when they're all mixed up together in a fiber optic cable? It's like herding cats.
it is a bit like herding cats, but that's where their innovation comes in. They've developed what are called eigenvalue response functions, RFs for short.
RFs is okay. So RFS dot, that sounds a little complicated for me. What are those in a nutshell? What are we talking about here?
Think of RFs like a control panel for each soliton. By tweaking certain parameters of these RFs, scientists can fine-tune individual soliton velocities, even when they're all jumbled together. Imagine you're in a recording studio, and you've got that sound mixer with all the dials.
Yeah.
You can adjust each dial to isolate specific instruments.
Right. Okay.
It's a similar idea.
Okay, so instead of adjusting the bass or treble, the scientists are tweaking these RFs to, what, control the speed and even separate these solitons within a beam of light? And all of this is based on some pretty intense math, I'm guessing, equations with integrals and wave functions and all that.
Oh, there's definitely some heavy-duty math going on behind the scenes. But the good news is we don't have to get into those equations to appreciate the implications of all this. And trust me, the implications are huge.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What did these scientists actually do in the lab? How'd they take this theory and actually make it work?
All right, so picture this. They've got these powerful lasers firing pulses of light into a loop of fiber optic cable. The whole setup is carefully calibrated to create those specific conditions we need to generate the solitons. Then, to keep an eye on everything, they're using something called homodyne detection.
Hold on, homodyne detection. Okay, you're losing me again. Break that one down for me.
Basically, it's like a really detailed scan of the light waves. It lets them map out both the intensity and the phase of the light as it travels through that loop.
Okay, so it's giving them like a live feed of the soliton racetrack.
Exactly. They can see how the solitons are behaving in real time.
Okay, so we've got our soliton track all set up, but how do they actually control these light pulses using those RFs? Like, how do they actually steer them?
That's where they bring in these electro-optic modulators, BOMs for short. Think of them like super fast gates strategically placed along that fiber optic loop. By tweaking the timing and intensity of these gates, they can make tiny adjustments to the phase of the light wave.
Okay, I'm with you so far, but how does messing with the phase of the light actually control those solitons?
Well, that's the beauty of those RFs. They act like a blueprint, telling us precisely how those tiny changes to the phase will affect each soliton's speed and behavior. It's like they're creating an obstacle course for the solitons, nudging them into different lanes, even making some break away from the pack altogether. It's incredible. And the best part is that when they tested all of this, the results lined up almost perfectly with what their theory predicted.
Really impressive, isn't it? It's like we're witnessing a whole new kind of optics being born right in front of us.
This is not just about bending light anymore. We're like down there getting our hands dirty, messing with it at the smallest level.
Exactly. We've gone from using a big clunky marker to a nano-sized pen. The possibilities are, well, kind of limitless, I can imagine. But before we get too carried away, dreaming up all the cool things we could do, let's take a step back, get real for a second. Are there any challenges, anything holding this research back, any speed bumps on the road ahead?
That's a great question because while the science is mind-blowing, taking it from the lab to the real world, well, that's a whole other story.
So we've got the blueprints for this amazing new gadget, but actually building it, making it work in the real world, that's where things get tricky.
Yeah, exactly. You see, to generate and manipulate solitons with this kind of precision, it takes a lot of really specialized equipment, a very controlled environment. It's not easy to just replicate that on a larger scale, at least not yet.
So kind of like right now, it's like a finely tuned race car, but we need to figure out how to make a whole fleet of them, make sure they can all handle rush hour traffic.
That's a good analogy. And speaking of traffic, think about how data travels through fiber optic cables. It's sent as pulses of light, right?
Right.
But these pulses, they have this annoying habit of spreading out, getting weaker over long distances. That's why we have signal boosters.
Yeah, like rest stops along the information superhighway, making sure everything keeps moving.
Exactly. But now think about solitons. They're different. They're like those marathon runners of the light world. They don't get tired, they don't spread out, so they can travel much farther without needing a boost.
So they're like the express lane on the superhighway.
Exactly. And because they stay in their lane, don't spill over into others, you can send a lot more of them at once, which means way more data squeezed into the same pipeline.
Okay, so more data, faster speeds, sounds great.
Yeah.
But what about that dreaded buffering? When you're trying to watch a video and it's just, that stops.
Yeah.
Are we saying goodbye to all that?
Well, I don't want to overpromise.
Yeah.
Because there are always other factors at play. But this research, it definitely brings us closer to a smoother online experience.
Okay, so maybe not a completely buffer-free future, but we're getting there.
Exactly. Faster, more reliable data transmission means fewer bottlenecks, fewer interruptions.
Music to my ears. So faster internet, great. But we're talking about pushing the boundaries of what we can even do with light itself. What other doors could this open?
Oh, the possibilities are truly mind-boggling. Think about medicine, for example. Imagine using these ultra-precise pulses of light for surgery, making incisions without a scalpel. Or how about incredibly high-resolution imaging, seeing things we've never been able to see before?
Wow, so instead of scalpels, it's just beams of light doing the work.
Precisely. And because those soliton pulses, they hold their shape so well, you can get incredible precision, but with minimal damage to the surrounding tissue.
Wow. And I bet this goes way beyond medicine.
Absolutely. Take manufacturing, for example. We could have laser cutting and engraving techniques that are so precise, so intricate.
Okay, so we're talking about everything from faster internet to groundbreaking medical treatments to advanced manufacturing.
Exactly. This is about more than just light. This is about all sorts of waves.
All right, you mentioned that earlier. Give us some examples. What other waves are we talking about?
Well, think about sound waves, for example. Imagine creating acoustic solitons, sound waves that could travel through water, even solid objects, without losing their shape. It could revolutionize underwater communication, sonar technology,
Wow.
even medical ultrasound imaging. The applications are vast.
It's like we've unlocked this secret code, this hidden language that governs how waves behave, and we're only just beginning to understand its potential. It's like we're living in a science fiction movie, except it's real.
I know, right?
All this talk about lightning-fast internet, changing how we do medicine, even manufacturing. And it all comes down to manipulating waves, even beyond light. It's mind-blowing.
And to think, we're just getting started. We've only just begun to explore what's possible.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so exciting, right? It's not just about finding the answers. It's about asking the right questions.
Absolutely. The questions that lead us to those big breakthroughs.
So what are some of those big unanswered questions? What mysteries are we hoping to unravel next in this field?
Well, remember those RFs, those control panels for solitons?
Yeah.
Right now, we're pretty good at controlling individual solitons.
Right.
But what if we could control entire groups of them, like an orchestra, and make them all move in sync?
Okay, now you're just showing off. We've gone from separating ingredients in a smoothie to choreographing a whole soliton dance party.
It's a pretty wild thought. But imagine what we could do if we had that level of control.
Yeah, what could we do?
We could encode information in the very structure of those soliton groups. We could create entirely new forms of data storage transmission.
So it's not just about sending more data faster. It's about fundamentally changing how we communicate using light.
Exactly.
Now, that's a game changer, but let's zoom out even more. We've talked about light, we've talked about sound, but you've hinted that this soliton stuff, it goes even deeper than that, right?
It does. Remember, solitons, they represent this beautiful balance. On the one hand, you've got dispersion, that tendency for things to spread out. And on the other hand, you've got nonlinearity, this force pulling things together and this kind of interplay. It's everywhere in nature. The ripples on a pond when you throw a stone,
Right.
the patterns of galaxies in space. It's all this dance between order and chaos.
Wow, so this research, it's like giving us this whole new way of looking at the universe.
It really has, and that's what makes this whole field so captivating. It's this constant interplay between theory and experiment, you know? We're pushing the boundaries of what we know, leading to those aha moments that could change the world.
It's incredible to think that something as seemingly simple as a pulse of light could hold such profound secrets about the universe.
Exactly. Who knows what other harmonies, what other hidden patterns are still out there, just waiting to be discovered.
That's a great place to wrap things up. Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey into the world of optical solitons.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned something new, had some of those ha moments, and maybe even had your mind blown a little bit. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and most importantly, never stop learning.
All right, so get this today. We're diving into fiber optics, but not just any fiber optics. We're talking about like messing with the very essence of light itself. Inside those tiny glass tubes, it's way cooler than it sounds, trust me. We've got excerpts from this research paper, intense title, Manipulation of Strongly Interacting Solitons in Optical Fiber Experiments. Don't worry, we'll break it down. But seriously, sculpting light. What's that all about?
So it's wild, right? We're not just setting light down a wire here. We're talking about sculpting light itself into these things, these solitons.
Okay, soliton. So like picture a perfect wave at the beach, you know, holding its shape as it rolls along. That's kind of the vibe we're talking about here, but like swap the water for light. And these little guys, they can travel crazy distances without getting all messed up, which is why they're so important for high-speed data.
Exactly. That's the key. But here's the thing, it gets kind of tricky. Imagine trying to herd cats made of light. These solitons, they're constantly being pulled every which way by two major forces. On the one hand, you have dispersion is basically light wanting to spread out like ripples in a pond. And then on the other hand, get this non-linearity, this weird thing where light basically messes with itself.
Hold on. Wait. Light interacting with itself? Is that like even a thing?
Oh, it's a thing. And to try to predict what these little light herds are going to do, scientists use something called the nonlinear Schrodinger equation. But don't worry, we won't be doing any math today.
Thank goodness.
The important thing is this equation. It's like their secret decoder ring for understanding how these solitons behave, right?
So it's like they figured out the rule book for this game. These light particles are playing at, what is it, like 1 billion miles an hour or something?
Something like that. And the paper we're looking at today, they're adding something else into the mix. They're introducing what they call eigenvalue response functions.
Yeah.
RFs for short. Think of them, think of RFs like a treasure map.
Ooh, a treasure map. Okay. I like where this is going. Tell me more.
This map, it tells scientists exactly where to give a pulse of light, like a tiny poke, to make those solitons dance. It's all about precision, you see.
Okay, hold up. I need like a real world example here, you know, because we're talking about controlling something as small as light.
Okay, picture this. You've got a box, right? And it's totally packed with bouncy balls, all crammed in there. These RFs are like knowing exactly where to press on the box to make a specific ball fly out in a specific direction.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So these researchers, they're kind of like playing a super powered game of billiards, but with light beams instead of pool balls and on like a microscopic level.
Pretty much. The paper, they lay out this whole experiment with a special type of laser, a loop of optical fiber 8 kilometers long.
Yeah.
And some insanely precise equipment to keep track of how the light changes after each lap around the loop.
8 kilometers, that's like, what, running a marathon with light?
Exactly. And the adjustments they're making to the pulses of light, we're talking picoseconds here.
Picoseconds. For those of us who don't have like a physics degree, that's a trillionth of a second. This is serious speed.
Absolutely. And here's the amazing part. This is what got the researchers so excited. By using these carefully calculated cokes, which are really just tiny, tiny shifts in the light wave, they were able to make individual solitons break away from the groove. And they could even control how fast each one was moving.
It's like they created a light-speed highway inside a fiber optic cable, and they're directing traffic, making individual cars of light speed up or slow down whenever they want. This is, like, next-level stuff.
It really is. And the thing is, this has huge implications, way beyond just, making solitons do tricks in a fiber optic cable.
Right.
This level of control over light could totally revolutionize things like telecommunications.
Imagine, like, a world where your internet is not just crazy fast, but, like, basically limitless. No more buffering, no more lag. That's the future this research hints at, right? I mean, if we can get this precise with how we control the flow of information as light.
It's not just speed either. This level of control, it could lead to some really cool breakthroughs in optical computing, like using light instead of electricity to process information.
Whoa, hold on. Light-powered computers? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, imagine light beams zipping around inside a computer chip doing calculations at, the speed of light. It'd make our best supercomputers look like old calculators.
Okay, that's, like, blowing my mind a little bit. Light-powered computers. It's like something straight out of Star Trek. But you're saying this research suggests that could actually happen.
It's a possibility. And it just shows how wild scientific exploration can be, right? Like,
Yeah.
you start digging into something really specific, like how to control tiny packets of light in a fiber optic cable.
Yeah.
It's like, boom. Suddenly you're opening up possibilities in fields you never even thought about.
It's like those accidental discoveries that seem small at first, but end up changing everything. Like, who knew messing with mold would lead to antibiotics? Speaking of, what in this research really got you excited?
For me, it's how these researchers used these elegant mathematical tools to not just describe, but actually predict and control something as fundamental as light. It's one thing to observe these solitons, but to actually conduct them like an orchestra of light. That's incredible.
So they basically cracked the code, figured out how to speak the language of light.
Yeah, and then they use that knowledge to make light do things we never thought possible.
Amazing. You said we weren't going to go too deep into the math today, but I gotta ask, what makes this equation, this nonlinear Schrödinger thing, so special?
It's fascinating. It basically captures how these two forces we talked about, the dispersion and the nonlinearity, how they play off each other. It's a balancing act, mathematically speaking. And by tweaking the variables, right, the researchers, they found these sweet spots where they could just exert this incredible level of control.
So it's not just understanding the equation, it's knowing how to manipulate it, like
Yeah.
playing a musical instrument, right, to get a specific effect.
Exactly. It's like having all these knobs and dials that let you fine-tune how light itself behaves.
Wow. Just incredible. And it makes you wonder, if we can do this with light, what else might be possible? I mean, it's like we're stepping into science fiction here. We're not just using technology. We're composing symphonies with the very fabric of reality. It makes you wonder, what other laws of physics can we, bend or even rewrite if we keep thinking this way?
That's what's so cool about science, right? It's not just about finding answers. It's about finding new questions.
Yeah.
We can do this with light. So, what about sound?
Okay, yeah, sound waves. We haven't even gone there yet.
What if we could manipulate sound waves with that same level of precision?
A world where we can shape sound as easily as we can light? Whoa, okay, I'm in. Paint me a picture. What would that even look like?
Well, think about it. Imagine rooms that are perfectly silent. No unwanted noise, just pure silence. Or imagine personalized sound zones, right? You could be listening to a rock concert at full blast, and the person next to you could be enjoying peaceful meditation music.
Oh, okay, that's wild. But what about medicine? We could use sound waves to break up kidney stones without surgery, right?
Yeah.
Or even deliver drugs to specific cells in the body.
Exactly. Targeted sound waves. And it's not just medicine. This tech could totally change how we interact with, everything. Imagine using sound waves to make things levitate.
Wait, what? Levitate? Lift heavy objects with sound?
Yeah. Or even imagine constructing buildings with sound waves instead of, traditional building materials.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Building skyscrapers with sound, that sounds like a superhero movie or something.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It sounds crazy. But that's the amazing thing about science, right? What seems impossible today could be totally normal tomorrow. And who knows what other applications are out there just waiting to be discovered. We're just getting started, really.
Yeah. So, okay, to wrap things up for our listeners today, we started off talking about solitons, those tiny packets of light that can travel super far without losing their shape. We learned how researchers are using these eigenvalue response functions, RFs for short, to control them with incredible precision. And, that's already amazing in itself. But, the really exciting part is what it means for the future. We could be looking at a world with crazy fast internet, computers that are more powerful than we can even imagine, and like we were just saying, maybe even the ability to manipulate sound waves in ways that seem impossible right now. This is the deep dive, reminding you to stay curious because the most mind-blowing discoveries often start with a simple question. And by pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible, well, we might just unlock a future we never even dreamed of. Okay, so imagine a wave, but not just any wave.
Right.
Like picture a tsunami, that monstrous wall of water, but instead of crashing and breaking on the shore, it just keeps rolling smoothly forever. That, my friend, is a soliton.
It's like a mind-bending concept, really. A true rogue wave that defies the natural order. It holds its shape and energy as it travels. And what's even more wild is these solitons, they aren't just a quirk of the ocean.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be diving into today. This
Oh.
paper about how scientists are now creating and manipulating these light tsunamis inside fiber optic cables, those tiny threads that power our internet.
And the potential here is massive. So imagine, if we could encode data onto individual solitons, we could be talking about internet speeds that make today's connections look like, dial-up.
Okay, that's seriously cool. But how do you even begin to wrangle something as elusive as a soliton, let alone a light tsunami inside a fiber optic cable?
That's where this research comes in. They've developed a new mathematical tool, a way to predict and control the behavior of individual solitons, even when they're crammed together at a fiber optic cable. It's like having a conductor's baton for an orchestra of light.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. So walk me through this. We've got these light tsunamis, these solitons, zipping through fiber optic cables. What makes them behave so differently from regular light?
It all comes down to the unique environment inside a fiber optic cable. Light trapped in that tiny glass thread doesn't act like the light we see every day. It follows a different set of rules. It's a complex dance dictated by the nonlinear Schrödinger equation, the NLSE.
The NLSE. Catchy name. Don't worry, you don't have to break out the chalkboard just yet. So the NLSE is like the rule book for light in these cables. And it's this rule book that allows for these weird, stable solitons to form.
Precisely. It explains how, under these very specific conditions, light can interact with itself to create these persistent solitary waves.
Okay, so we've got the rule book, the NLSE. But this new research, they've gone a step further. They figured out a way to not just understand these solitons, but to actually manipulate them. That's what this whole eigenvalue response function thing is about, right?
You're catching on quickly. This eigenvalue response function, as intimidating as it sounds, is actually the key to unlocking a whole new level of control. Think of it like this.
I'm ready. Hit me with it.
Okay, so imagine you have a massive library, right? Thousands upon thousands of books. How do you find the exact one you're looking for?
Well, you'd use the Dewey Decimal System, right? Each book has its own unique identifier.
Exactly. That's what an eigenvalue is like for a soliton. It's a unique identifier, a specific number that tells you everything about that soliton's properties, how fast it's moving, how much energy it's carrying, you name it.
Okay, so every soliton gets its own little ID tag. That makes sense. But how do we use that to actually control them?
Yeah.
That's where the response function part comes in, right?
You've got it. This eigenvalue response function is like a secret code book, a guide to manipulating each soliton's ID. It tells us exactly where and how to tweak the system to make a specific soliton behave the way we want.
So if I wanted to slow down one specific soliton in this fiber optic cable, even if it's surrounded by other solitons, I could use this response function to figure out exactly how to do that.
Precisely. And not just slowing it down, you could speed it up, make it switch places with another soliton, even make it disappear entirely.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Disappear entirely. How is that even possible?
Remember how we talked about the phase of a light wave?
Yeah, you were explaining it as the position of a point on a spinning wheel.
Right. Well, by subtly adjusting the phase of the light at very specific points, we can actually manipulate the energy distribution within the fiber. It's like a delicate game of billiards, using precise nudges to send specific solitons exactly where we want them to go.
This is blowing my mind. So to test all of this, they built an actual real-life soliton racetrack in the lab.
They did. They used a laser to generate pulses of light and sent them through a loop of fiber optic cable. And here's the really cool part.
Tell me. They used a box-shaped pulse of light. I remember reading that in the paper. Why go with a box when everyone else seems to be using these smooth pulses? Don't tell me. They used a box-shaped pulse of light. I remember reading that in the paper. Why go with a box when everyone else seems to be using these smooth pulses?
You're right to be curious. Most studies do use these smooth, idealized pulses. But this team, they wanted to get closer to the real world. Think about the signals we send through fiber optic cables every day. Emails, videos, cat memes, they're not smooth at all. They're more like bursts of information. Closer to that box-shaped pulse.
So by using this box shape, they made the experiment more challenging, but also more relevant to how we might actually use this technology in the future.
Okay, I'm convinced. So they've got their laser, their fiber optic racetrack, their box-shaped pulses, and they're measuring the phase of the light to see what these solitons are up to. What did they find? Were they actually able to control these things?
Not only were they able to control them, they did it with incredible precision. By applying these tiny phase perturbations, think of them like carefully calibrated nudges, they could make specific solitons within that box, pulse speed up, slow down, even switch places with each other. Imagine being able to direct traffic inside a fiber optic cable with that level of control.
That's insane. It's like they're not just studying these light tsunamis, they're conducting them, orchestrating their every move. That's a great way to put it. And remember, they were doing this with a pulse shape that's much closer to real-world signals than anything we've seen before.
Okay, so let's talk applications. We teased earlier about super fast internet, but what else could this lead to?
The possibilities are really exciting. In telecommunications, this level of control over solitons could lead to, like, unimaginably fast internet speeds,
Sure.
but also incredibly stable and secure communications. Imagine data traveling as solitons, impervious to the interference that plagues our current networks. No more buffering, no more dropped calls.
Sign me up. What about beyond telecommunications? What about that integrable turbulence thing we briefly touched on earlier? How does this research play into that?
Ah, yes. Integrable turbulence. This is where things get really interesting. So we usually think of turbulence as chaos, right? Like the unpredictable churning of a river or the swirling patterns in a storm cloud. But it turns out, even in these chaotic systems, there can be hidden order, subtle patterns beneath the surface. And solitons, believe it or not, play a key role in this hidden order.
So these light tsunamis, these seemingly isolated phenomena, could hold the key to understanding much larger, more complex systems.
Exactly. By understanding how to control solitons, how to manipulate their behavior, we gain a new lens through which to view these turbulent systems, to unlock their secrets. And who knows what other areas of science this could impact? Meteorology, oceanography, even astrophysics? The possibilities are truly vast.
It's incredible to think that this tiny, seemingly niche area of research could have such far-reaching implications. It really highlights the interconnectedness of everything, how even the most unexpected discoveries can ripple out and change our understanding of the world.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of science. Every new discovery, every breakthrough opens up a world of possibilities we could never have imagined before.
This eigenvalue response function, it's more than just a mathematical tool. It's a key. It's unlocking doors we didn't even know existed. If we can harness the power of these light tsunamis, who knows what the future holds? That's something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.